Imagine sending your 3 children to the beach on a sunny summer day, expecting them to return for lunch, only to realize they vanished without a trace, never to be seen again, their laughter replaced by an agonizing silence that haunts you for decades. That's the nightmare that struck Jim and Nancy Beaumont on January 26, 1966, when their children, Jane, 9, Arnna, 7, and Grant, 4 years old, disappeared from Glenelg Beach in Adelaide, Australia, on what should have been a carefree Australia Day outing. A day meant for celebration and joy. Welcome to Global Shadows, where we uncover the darkest crimes against the innocent, peeling back the layers of mysteries that linger in the shadows of history. Today, we're diving into the disappearance of the Beaumont Children, a case that not only shattered a family's world, but also marked a turning point in Australia's history, ending an era of innocence and sparking one of the country's largest and most desperate manhunts, a search that continues to grip the nation nearly 60 years later. The Beaumont siblings were last seen at 11:45 a.m., buying pastries with a £1 note, more money than their parents had given them, before playing under a sprinkler near the beach, their carefree giggles echoing in the salty air. Witnesses reported seeing them with a tall, blond man in his 30s, who seemed friendly, laughing with the children as they played, tossing a ball back and forth in what looked like an innocent game. But by noon, they were gone, leaving behind no clues except a flurry of conflicting sightings and a community in shock. Over the decades, suspects like Bevan Spencer von Einem, a convicted child murderer, and others linked to Adelaide's dark underbelly have been investigated, but no one has been charged, leaving the case shrouded in mystery. Searches, including a 2018 dig at a factory site, have yielded nothing but heartbreak, and as of April 2025, the case remains unsolved, with a $1 million reward still active, a beacon of hope for answers that may never come. The Beaumont disappearance changed how Australians viewed safety, teaching parents to never let their children out of sight, even in the safest of places. As we explore the mystery, the suspects, the family's enduring pain, and the lessons learned, we'll ask, what happened to Jane, Arnna, and Grant, and how can we protect our children from the shadows that lurk in plain sight on a seemingly perfect day? Let's step into Glenelg, where a sunny day turned into a lifelong mystery that still echoes with the sound of lost innocence. Have you heard of the Beaumont Children's disappearance before? What's your first thought about this case? Share below. On the morning of January 26, 1966, Jim and Nancy Beaumont waved goodbye to their 3 children, Jane, 9, Arnna, 7, and Grant, 4, as they headed to Glenelg Beach, a popular spot just a short bus ride from their home at 109 Harding Street in Somerton Park, a quiet suburb of Adelaide. It was Australia Day, a public holiday filled with barbecues, parades, and community events, and the weather was perfect, sunny with a light breeze, the kind of day that beckoned families to the seaside for sandcastles and ice creams. The Beaumont children were well-mannered and responsible, especially Jane, who often looked after her younger siblings with maturity beyond her years, her parents trusting her to keep Arnna and Grant safe. Nancy gave them 6 shillings for the bus fare and snacks, expecting them back by lunchtime, a routine they followed many times before during the school holidays. The kids were excited, dressed in their swimsuits, Jane in a green one-piece, Arnna in pink, and Grant in blue shorts, with towels slung over their shoulders, ready for a morning of splashing in the surf and building castles in the sand, their laughter trailing behind them as they boarded the bus. They arrived at the beach around 10 a.m. and were last seen definitively at 11:45 a.m., buying pastries at Wenzel's Bakery on Jetty Road with a £1 note, far more than the 6 shillings Nancy had given them, raising immediate questions about where the extra money came from and who might have given it to them. Witnesses saw them playing under a sprinkler in Collie Reserve, a grassy area near the beach, laughing and carefree, their wet hair glistening in the sun as they darted to the water jets. Several people reported seeing them with a tall, blond man in his 30s, wearing a blue swimsuit, who seemed friendly, tossing a ball with the children as they played, his presence unremarkable in the bustling holiday crowd. Jane, Arnna, and Grant appeared comfortable with him, suggesting he may have gained their trust, perhaps over the course of the morning or even the days prior, a chilling thought that would later haunt investigators. But by noon, they had vanished, leaving behind no trace except their towels, a few scattered toys, and a community left reeling in disbelief. When they didn't return home by 2 p.m., Nancy grew worried, pacing the kitchen as the clock ticked on, and by evening, Jim reported them missing to the Glenelg police station, launching a search that would change Australia forever, turning a day of joy into a nightmare that refused to end. How could 3 children disappear in broad daylight, on a beach filled with holidaymakers, without a single definitive clue? Did you know the Beaumont children were seen with a mysterious man? What would you have done if you saw them that day? The disappearance of the Beaumont children triggered one of Australia's largest manhunts, a desperate effort that united a nation in grief and determination. Within hours, police, volunteers, and even soldiers from a nearby Keswick barracks descended on Glenelg Beach, combing the golden sands, the surrounding dunes, and the calm turquoise waters for any sign of the children. Divers searched the ocean depths, fearing the siblings might drown in a tragic accident, while others scoured the nearby parks and alleyways of Jetty Road, calling their names into night, their voices swallowed by the sound of the waves. The media descended on Adelaide, splashing the children's photos across newspapers. Jane with her serious expression and neatly tied hair, Arnna's shy smile framed by her blonde curls, and Grant's cheeky grin, his face freckled from the sun, turning them into household names that every Australian would come to know. Radio broadcasts pleaded for information, interrupting regular programming with urgent appeals, and the public responded with hundreds of tips, from alleged sightings in Melbourne to reports of a blonde man acting suspiciously near the beach, though many leads were clouded by the chaos of the holiday crowd. But the leads were frustratingly vague, each one a glimmer of hope that quickly faded. A woman claimed she saw the children walking alone on Jetty Road around 3 p.m., holding hands as they headed toward the tram stop, while a postman reported seeing them near their bus stop on Mosley Street, laughing as if nothing was wrong. But these accounts conflicted with the bakery's sighting at 11:45 a.m., leaving investigators uncertain of the timeline. The £1 note raised alarm. Nancy insisted she'd only given them 6 shillings, suggesting someone else had given them the money, possibly the blonde man seen playing with them, a man who seemed to know them well enough to earn their trust. Australia in 1966 was a more trusting place. Children often roamed freely, playing in streets and beaches without constant supervision, their parents confident in the safety of their communities. The Beaumont case shattered that innocence, making parents across the nation realize that danger could lurk even on a sunny beach in the middle of a national holiday, a realization that would forever change how Australians raise their children. Jim and Nancy were devastated, clinging to hope as the days turned into weeks. Their once happy home at 109, Harding Street now a shrine to their missing children, filled with the echoes of their laughter and the unbearable weight of their absence. How could a nation so united in its search, with every resource at its disposal, come up empty-handed, leaving a family to face an unimaginable void? Can you imagine the panic of those first days searching for the Beaumont children? What do you think about the £1 note mystery? As the investigation stretched into months and then years, South Australia police pursued several suspects and theories, but none led to the Beaumont children, leaving the case shrouded in uncertainty. The tall, blonde man seen with the children became the primary focus. Described as tan, in his mid-30s, athletic, with a distinctive European accent, he was last seen walking with them toward the beach showers around 11:50 a.m., just minutes after the bakery sighting. Police released sketches based on witness descriptions, depicting a lean man with sharp features. But despite widespread circulation in newspapers and on television, no one came forward to identify him, his identity remaining as elusive as the children themselves. One theory suggested the children were abducted by a pedophile ring, a grim possibility given Adelaide's history of child abductions in the 1960s and 70s, a period later dubbed the city's dark years due to a string of unsolved cases. Bevan Spencer von Einem, a convicted murderer linked to the 1979 to 1983 family murders of 5 young men in Adelaide, emerged as a suspect in the 1990s after a prison informant claimed von Einem boasted about taking 3 kids from a beach to experiment on them, a chilling confession that lacked corroborating evidence, leaving police unable to charge him in the Beaumont case. Other suspects included Arthur Stanley Brown, a handyman charged with the 1970 murders of 2 sisters in Queensland, whose appearance and behavior matched the blonde man's description, though he was never convicted due to lack of evidence and his deteriorating mental health. Theories range from the children being sold into a trafficking network, a fear fueled by whispers of organized crime in Adelaide, to a tragic accident, like drowning in the ocean with their bodies swept away by the tides, never to be recovered. In 2013, a psychic-led dig at a factory site in North Adelaide, once owned by a man named Harry Phipps, a local businessman whose sons claimed he was involved, unearthed nothing but animal bones, despite media frenzy and renewed hope for closure. The lack of physical evidence, no bodies, no clothing beyond their towels, kept the case in limbo. Posts on X in 2023 show users still debating, with some believing the children were buried under new developments in Glenelg, while others speculated they were taken overseas, their fates hidden in the shadows of a global network. The $1 million reward, still active in 2025, continues to draw tips, but each lead fizzles out, leaving the question that has haunted Australia for nearly 60 years. Why has this case, despite the nation's best efforts, remained unsolved? Its secrets buried as deeply as the children themselves might be? Who do you think the tall, blonde man was? Do you believe any of the suspects were involved? Jim and Nancy Beaumont's lives were forever altered by their children's disappearance, a wound that time could never heal. For years, they left their front door unlocked at 109 Harding Street, a heartbreaking ritual rooted in the hope that Jane, Arnna, and Grant would walk back in, their voices filling the silent house once more with laughter and chatter. They kept the children's rooms untouched, Jane's books neatly stacked, Arnna's dolls lined up on her bed, and Grant's toy car scattered on the floor, preserving a moment frozen in time. Their Christmas presents unopened under the tree for years, a painful reminder of the holiday they never celebrated together again. Nancy, in particular, struggled with guilt. She'd let them go to the beach alone, a common practice in 1966 when children were given more freedom, but one she'd never forgive herself for, replaying that morning over and over, wondering if a different choice could have saved them. Jim threw himself into the search, driving around Adelaide for hours each day, following every lead, chasing shadows in the hopes of finding his children, while Nancy became a recluse, unable to face the world that had taken her family, her grief a private prison she couldn't escape. The couple separated in the 1990s, the strain of their loss too much to bear, but remained in contact, united by their shared sorrow, their love for their children the one thing that endured. In a rare 2018 interview with 60 Minutes Australia, Nancy, then 92, said, "I still hope they're alive, but I know they're probably not," her voice trembling with the weight of 52 years of uncertainty. The public's obsession with the case added to their pain, turning their private tragedy into a national spectacle. Letters poured into their home, some offering support and prayers, others cruelly claiming the children were dead or that the Beaumonts were blamed for their negligence, each word a dagger to their already broken hearts. Hoaxes plagued them, including a 1968 letter from someone claiming to have the children in Tasmania, demanding a meeting that police later deemed a cruel prank by a teenager, a betrayal that deepened their despair. The Beaumonts moved to a new home in the 1980s, seeking privacy from the media glare, but the case followed them, a constant reminder of their loss, their new house still filled with the ghosts of their children's laughter. Their story became a cautionary tale, teaching Australia that even a safe suburb like Glenelg could harbor darkness, a lesson that reshaped the nation's understanding of safety. How does a family endure such unending uncertainty? Their hopes stretched in over decades, their love for their children both a lifeline and a source of endless pain. Can you imagine the Beaumont's pain, waiting for decades with no answers? How would you cope with such a loss? Over the decades, the search for the Beaumont children has been relentless, a testament to a nation's refusal to forget, with South Australia police following thousands of leads, many leading to dead ends that only deepened the mystery. In 1966, initial searches focused on Glenelg beaches and waters, with divers combing the ocean floor and volunteers scouring the dunes, hoping to find a trace of Jane, Arnna, and Grant, a sandal, a towel, anything to explain their disappearance. As weeks turned into months, efforts expanded nationwide, with police in every state following tips from concerned citizens, some claiming to have seen the children in far-off cities like Sydney or Perth. In 1996, a tip led to the excavation of a warehouse in North Adelaide, where a former employee claimed to have seen suspicious activity in 1966, but the dig yielded nothing. Another false hope in a case full of them. Another major search in 2018, prompted by a new theory that the children were buried at a factory site in Castalloy, North Adelaide, owned by Harry Phipps, a local businessman whose sons claimed he was involved and whose wealth raised suspicions. Unearthed only animal bones, despite weeks of excavation and renewed media frenzy, leaving investigators and the Beaumont family with yet another disappointment. A $1 million reward, offered since 2016 and still active as of April 2025, remains unclaimed, a stark reminder of the case's enduring mystery and the lack of definitive answers. False leads have haunted the investigation, each one a cruel twist of hope for the Beaumonts. In 1989, a woman in her 30s came forward, claiming she lived next to the Beaumont Children in Victoria in the 1970s, raised by a couple who called her by different names. But her story fell apart under scrutiny, her memories inconsistent with known facts. In 2016, a man in his 50s claimed he was Grant Beaumont, saying he'd been raised in foster care with no knowledge of his past. But DNA tests disproved his claim, another heartbreak for a family clinging to hope. Posts on X in 2024 show continued public fascination, with users speculating the children might have been taken overseas to Europe or Asia, or hidden in plain sight in Adelaide, perhaps raised under new identities by their abductor. The lack of physical evidence, no bodies, no belongings beyond their towels and a few toys, has kept the case in limbo, leaving police to rely on fading memories, grainy sketches, and circumstantial clues that lead nowhere. The Beaumont children's disappearance remains Australia's most famous cold case, a puzzle that has baffled detectives and amateur sleuths alike for nearly 6 decades, raising the question, what will it take to finally solve this mystery? To bring closure to a family and a nation that refuses to forget? What do you think about the 2018 factory dig? Do you believe the Beaumont children will ever be found? The disappearance of the Beaumont children didn't just break a family. It changed Australia forever, rewriting the rules of childhood and safety in a nation that had once felt untouchable. Before 1966, Australia was a place where kids roamed freely, playing in streets, parks, and beaches without fear, their parents trusting in the inherent goodness of their communities. The Beaumont case ended that era of innocence, ushering in a new awareness of child safety that reshaped societal norms across the country. Parents began supervising their children more closely, no longer allowing them to wander alone, their eyes scanning every stranger with suspicion, a stark contrast to the carefree days of the past. Stranger danger campaigns swept through schools in the late 1960s and 1970s, teaching kids to be wary of unfamiliar adults, to never accept gifts or rides from someone they didn't know, lessons that became second nature to a generation raised in the shadow of the Beaumont mystery. The case also inspired legislative changes. South Australia introduced stricter laws for reporting missing children, mandating immediate action within hours of a report, and police protocols for rapid response improved nationwide, ensuring future cases wouldn't suffer the same delays that hampered the initial search for Jane, Arnna, and Grant, delays that may have cost critical time in the early hours of their disappearance. Culturally, the Beaumont children became a symbol of lost innocence, their story immortalized in books like The Satin Man by Alan Whitaker, documentaries exploring the case's impact, and even a 2013 TV movie, The Beaumont Children, What Really Happened, which dramatized the mystery for a new generation. For Jim and Nancy, the pain never faded. Jim passed away in 2023 at 97, having spent his life searching for answers, while Nancy, now 98 as of April 2025, lives quietly in Adelaide, still hoping for closure, her frail hands clutching photos of her children, their faces frozen in time. The case remains active, with South Australia police occasionally releasing new appeals, like one in 2021 urging anyone with information come forward, even after all these years. The Beaumont story continues to resonate, a haunting reminder of the fragility of childhood and the need for vigilance in a world that can turn dark in an instant. Their legacy lives on the lessons they've taught Australia, lessons about protection, awareness, and enduring power, hope, even in the face of unimaginable loss. What can their legacy teach us today? And how can we ensure that no other family endures the same unending grief that has defined the Beaumont's lives for nearly 6 decades? How do you think the Beaumont case changed the way you view child safety? Share your thoughts. The disappearance of the Beaumont children is a chilling reminder that danger can strike even on a sunny day in a place meant for joy, where innocence should be untouchable. Jane, Arnna, and Grant vanished from Glenelg Beach in 1966, leaving behind a mystery that haunted Australia for nearly 60 years, a case that transformed a nation's understanding of safety and the vulnerability of its children. At Global Shadows, we're here to honor their memory by sharing lessons to keep your children safe, lessons that could change the outcome of that fateful Australia day. First, never let your kids out of sight in public places, even in familiar spots like a local beach or park, where the hustle and bustle can mask danger in plain sight. The Beaumonts trusted their children to play unsupervised, a common practice in the 1960s, when the world seemed safer, but one that cost them dearly. Always stay close, especially in crowded areas where predators can blend into the background, watching for an opportunity to strike. Next, teach your children to recognize and avoid danger, equipping them with the tools to protect themselves when you're not there. Jane, Arnna, and Grant were seen with a stranger who gained their trust, possibly over time, a man who seemed friendly enough to lower their guard. Talk to your kids about never speaking to or go with anyone they don't know, even if the person seems kind, offers them money, or claims to know their parents, like the £1 note the Beaumont children used, which may have been a lure. Practice what to do if they get separated, like finding a lifeguard, a police officer, or a trusted adult like a store clerk, and make sure they know your phone number by heart, so they can reach you in an emergency. Finally, advocate for stronger community safety measures to create a network of protection around our children. The Beaumont case led to better missing child protocols in Australia, such as immediate police response and public awareness campaigns. Support similar initiatives in your area, like faster police response times, community watch programs, or public education about child safety. Volunteer with local organizations to teach stranger danger and ensure every child in your community is protected, building a future where no one has to endure the Beaumont's pain. Let's make sure no family faces a heartbreak of losing their children to the shadows that can lurk even on the brightest of days. To Jane, Arnna, and Grant, we hope one day your family finds answers, and we'll keep your story alive, protect others from the same fate. Does this story interest you? Subscribe, share, and tell us. How do you keep your kids safe in public spaces like beaches or parks? What safety tips do you use when taking kids to places like the beach? Drop them in the comments.